Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Producers are spotting some foliar disease in wheat fields across Oklahoma. And for perspective and advice, we're joined by Bob Hunger, our extension wheat pathologist. And Bob, you've been traveling around Oklahoma talking with producers. What are you seeing and also hearing?
Well, actually, for the last 3 or 4 weeks now, diseases have become more prevalent, particularly stripe rust has become more prevalent in southwestern Oklahoma. Across western, as you move up further to the north, it's spotty, but there's hot pockets of it through central Oklahoma and south central Oklahoma. Around here in Stillwater, we've seen some, but again, it's kind of spotty around here, but especially southwest has been hit pretty hard with stripe rust already.
Let's kind of take a look at what typical stripe rust looks like and what else you're seeing in your research plot here in Stillwater.
Okay. Well, stripe rust, as you know, there's 2 different rusts that can come into Oklahoma, stripe rust and leaf rust. And stripe rust is the rust that usually comes first because it does much better in cooler temperatures. Now, we had some early infections of stripe rust in this variety here. We also had very heavy aphid infestations in this trial. And you can see the yellowing in the plot that is partly from the stripe rust, but also due to the heavy aphid infestation. On some of the leaves you may see some shiny spots. Here's a leaf that is actually showing some of the stripe rust in the typical stripes that you get with this disease. The yellowing itself is due to the aphids and the stripe rust both, and there's quite a bit of that. Shiny spots would be the honeydew produced by the aphids, and of course these aphids can transmit barley yellow dwarf, so I'm suspecting that about 3 weeks from now, somewhere in that time frame, there'll be a lot of barley yellow dwarf also showing up in this trial.
What kind of conditions have to be present to make it worse some years than others?
So you have to have the free moisture either from dews or rain, you have to have the inoculum, and then you have to have the susceptible varieties. And we certainly have the inoculum around the state now. With these windy conditions and warmer, there hasn't been exactly ideal moisture conditions, but we're still early in the spring, and so we could see the stripe rust in particular explode across the state. What
kind of treatment options then are there for what you're seeing so far?
Well, of course, there's insecticides that you can use for the aphids, and many of those should have been used already. For the foliar diseases, there's fungicides that can be used. But the fungicides, you want to make sure that you put them on early enough, sufficiently early, that you're protecting the yield and the test weight that you have there. Because a fungicide cannot bring that back. You have to have it on there before the disease gets very severe on the crops.
Okay, Bob, thanks a lot. We'll probably see you again in a few weeks to explain more. And for more information on foliar disease and some of the treatment options available, we have a fact sheet for you at sunup.okstate.edu.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet Weather Report. It's been a while since we've looked at soil moisture across the state. On a map of the percent of plant available water from the surface down to 16 inches, we're beginning to see that all too common difference between the eastern and western sides of the state. East of I-35, the lowest plant available water is 81% at the Westville Mesonet site. West of I-35, Kingfisher comes in with a very low 12% plant available water, and 10 sites have less than 50%. Wednesday was windy. A map of maximum wind gusts through 4 p.m. showed that Camargo had a 65 mile per hour wind gust. 10 sites had gusts above 58 miles per hour. 61 mesonet sites reported peak wind gusts between 40 and 57 miles per hour. And those high winds, combined with a broad swath of extremely low relative humidities across western Oklahoma, made Wednesday a tough day for Oklahoma firefighters. Most of the red map areas were below 15% at 4 p.m. Wednesday afternoon. Here's Gary with the latest on long-term rainfall.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everyone. I'm here to present the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, we're back after a 3-week hiatus. The bad, well, unfortunately, so is drought. And the ugly, well, that goes without saying. But for something really ugly, let's take a look at the latest U.S. Drought Monitor report. As you can see, in the last 3 to 4 weeks, drought has unfortunately spread across the northwestern quarter of the state. We now have drought throughout much of the Oklahoma Panhandle and from Harper County all the way down to Roger Mills County and over into Woodward County. So unfortunately, that's not very good. That goes along with a rapid expansion of abnormally dry conditions across the northwestern third of the state and also across much of Kansas, the Texas Panhandle, and southeastern Colorado and northeastern New Mexico. So it's really a region-wide area of dryness that we are seeing over the last 3 weeks. Now this area of new drought across far northwestern Oklahoma, along with that area of abnormally dry conditions, also shows up as being well below normal for the year thus far, at less than 40% of normal for that same time frame. Now, other than parts of southwestern and southeastern Oklahoma, most of Oklahoma have had deficits of moisture since the beginning of the year. Now, I'm not going to give you a forecast. We are coming up on spring, and hopefully our spring rains will take care of this area of dryness blossoming across northwestern Oklahoma and trying to spread to the southeast. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
It's been an interesting couple of weeks for Oklahoma crops, and Josh, let's talk about the canola and the cold weather.
Well, since the last time we talked about canola, we've had a lot happen. We've gone through those 80-degree days with some nice rainfall, and what we have as a result of this is this crop behind us. The crop's looking really good. It's quite a bit ahead of schedule. We're still looking at a couple weeks ahead of schedule for many parts of the state, and what it ended up is us being this far ahead of schedule in the freeze this last weekend. And there were quite a few areas of the state that were really cold and stayed cold for 20 to 30 hours, which can do a number on canola.
Now, how does canola compare to wheat whenever it does come to cold weather?
Well, since canola is considered indeterminate, which means that it still has a lot of growth left to it, compared to what you're looking at here. If you take a look at this canola plant we have here, we see that we have just a couple of flowers out, we have all these buds, and we have the potential to even put on more buds. And so this is what we're talking about by this indeterminate nature, which means that essentially that it has more buds than it has on it right now. That way, if we froze this entire stalk off, we still have potential to still make a crop.
Now, it's flowering right now across Oklahoma. Is that affecting, is that affected by the cold weather?
It is. The flowers are essentially the most sensitive part, or as we're talking right now, they're the sensitive part that we're worrying about. Depending on what guys across Oklahoma experienced, a lot of times with these really cold weather that stayed there for a couple of hours, we've probably lost the flowers that were there at that point in time. However, you see this stalk, if you will, is typical of what most guys are probably seeing. Is if they came out on Monday or Tuesday, these heads were drooped over and they looked like they were just really miserable. But you see now it's Thursday. We've had a couple of days of 70, 80 degree weather. It's perked right back up. the stem is nice and firm. You need to look through the stem to make sure that it's not soft. When we start looking at those soft stems, that's kind of dead tissue, and that's kind of what we're worried about. But we have even the top part of the plant is nice and firm. It's going to keep going again. Now we have the potential for another freeze this weekend, and this kind of trend is what we don't want to see with canola is freezing weather, growing again, freezing weather, growing again, freezing weather. We don't want to see that with canola. We want to see, if we have to go through a freeze at this time of year, one freeze, and then let's get back to growing the crop out. You don't even want to start saying snow or ice storms, but if we can get by without them, we'll be in a good spot.
Okay, thank you much, Josh Lofton, Cropping Systems Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. Kim, we were on a break for OETA Festival. Let's start today getting us up to speed with what's been going on the past 3 weeks or so.
Well, there really hasn't much happened on prices. We had a little rally in the market. That July contract tested that $5 the resistance level. It's backed off since then. I think the good news over the last 3 weeks is that we did break that long run downtrend that was established in October of 15. As we go forward now, we're moving sideways. Hopefully we'll break out on the top side.
A lot of talk this week about potential freeze damage with these colder temperatures some nights. Has that had any impact on markets at all?
Actually, it's been a non-event on the markets. Actually, if you look at the cash prices or the KC May contract price, they're a dime lower than they were before the freeze. It's such a small areas as you look at the potential world crop that any damage is essentially insignificant.
Let's talk a little bit more about that world crop and kind of why there isn't this impact that maybe there would be otherwise.
Well, we got just massive world stocks. We've talked about the 8.7 billion bushels ending stocks that we've got, and the 26.9 billion bushel crop that we harvested this year. We just got massive amounts of wheat in a bin, and so you take a few million bushels off the potential production for this next year, it's just not going to have much impact.
And a lot of people, of course, want to know what's it going to take for prices to get above the cost of production.
Well, it's going to take about a 7 or 8% decline in world wheat production. Let's look at some numbers. You've got beginning stocks at 8.7 billion bushels starting July 1. Right now they're predicting a 26.1 billion bushel world crop. That gives us about 34.8 billion bushel supply next year. We'll probably use about 26 billion bushels. That means our ending stocks for next year are 8.8 billion bushels, which is 100 million more than right now. So that's why prices aren't going on. What do we need to get the prices up in that $6 range? We need about a 7% decline in production. In other words, production for the world below 25 billion bushels.
Okay, thanks for the update. Good to see you. And we'll see you again next week.
As we go through this calving season, or any calving season for that matter, I want to remind producers that it's extremely important to make good records of any sets of twins that we might have had born this year. We've talked before about what happens if we have a heifer born twin to a bull calf. Because of the intermixing of the placental fluids. Once those two embryos are about 40 days of age in the uterus of the mother cow, the mixing of the fluids allows for the male antigens to have a really devastating effect on the development of the reproductive tract of the female or the heifer calf, and that's why we end up with what we call a free martin, a heifer that is just incapable of reproducing. It's very important that we keep track of that so that next fall at weeding time we make sure that any heifer that was born twin to a bull is gone ahead and shipped, and we don't save them as potential replacements. That also brings to mind then the concept of, if we have a set of heifers, perhaps some that we've purchased, that we're going to try to raise as replacements, we want to really do our due diligence after the first breeding season of having those heifers pregnancy checked and cull any open heifers. That's the easiest time that they have in their entire life to become pregnant. And if they don't do it at that particular time, chances are they'll be a problem child from then on. Research up in Montana a number of years ago kept track of replacement heifers that didn't get bred in their first breeding season, but they left them in the herd. And after about 4 years, they were averaging only a 55% calf crop. Therefore, they're just a bad bet, and we want to make sure that we go ahead and cull them. Not all of them are free martins, but we certainly want to make sure that we're culling those that have that low reproductive capability out of our herd. I think if you'll keep these concepts in mind as you go through this calving season and go through the breeding season with some replacement heifers this year, you'll end up with a more sound cow herd that's more reproductively capable of having a high percentage calf crop. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Pasture conditions across Oklahoma are changing because of the recent freezes, and Daryl, what does that mean for cattle?
Well, it may have some impact on our wheat grazing. You know, we've already passed, in much of the state, we've already passed first hollow stem, and so producers in many cases had already made the decision about whether they were going to graze out. Because of low wheat prices, that we've been hearing stories that there's more graze out happening this year. If the wheat got frosted, that just reinforces that decision for those producers. It may induce a few producers who had pulled cattle off, if they think they've got enough damage. We won't know for a few more days, but if they think they have enough damage, they could go back in and go back to a graze out decision. It's pretty late to go buy a whole new set of cattle. There's not a lot of time, so I don't know that we'll see a lot of that, but we could see some of it.
Now, parts of Oklahoma are starting to dry out. They haven't got those rains that we were hoping for. Is that going to affect cattle production in Oklahoma?
Well, at this time of the year, you know, the dry conditions that we're seeing in the Northwest and particularly out in the Panhandle are not a major concern. It's March, and particularly that far out, we're really not looking for a lot of green up or grass growth yet for another month or 5 or 6 weeks. And so, you know, it's something we want to keep an eye on. It could be the beginnings of a problem, and so we'll certainly want to keep an eye on it. But at this point in time, I don't see it as a major issue.
So we're not looking at the big sell-off of 2011.
No, absolutely not at this point. And you know, we're late enough in the game that I think we've got moisture to start the summer. Whether or not we get into problems by midsummer or late summer, we could see some of that develop. But again, it's just something right now to monitor more than anything.
And we have the benefit of actually pulling off some hay over the past year.
You know, forage stocks are in generally pretty good shape in terms of hay. Again, we've got moisture to start with for the most part, so I don't see this as even if it does develop into a drought, it's probably not a 2016 drought issue, other than perhaps very late in the year. It could set us up for bigger problems farther down the road if it were to be something that persists.
Okay, switching gears a little bit, it's been a few weeks since we've talked with you. Where are we at on the markets?
Well, you know, it's kind of been an early spring. We talked about that in terms of the wheat pasture, but also just in general in cattle and beef markets. We've seen several signs of a bit of an early spring. We've had a fairly nice seasonal run up in cattle prices. Feeder cattle, fed cattle, and boxed beef have all had a pretty nice run up, and some indication that we're a little ahead of schedule in terms of a bit of grilling demand. We've seen middle meats a little stronger, as well as some improvement in the wholesale ground beef market. All things that would suggest, because of the warm weather, we've got a kind of a jump start on some grilling. So I think we're a little ahead of the game there, and actually in pretty good shape at this point in time.
What's the demand like for U.S. beef across the world?
Well, we're still struggling, of course, with the headwinds from the strong dollar, although that has actually, you know, come down a little bit in the last few weeks as well. So, you know, we think 2016 will be certainly better than 2015 from a beef export standpoint. maybe more of a stabilizing market than really a big improvement. And we do expect less beef imports this year. So from a domestic supply standpoint, probably beef supplies they'll go up because we expect an increase in production, but they won't go up as much because we're going to offset some of that increased production with less beef imports.
Okay, thank you much, Daryl Pill, Livestock Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Sometimes sorting out expiration dates at the grocery store can be a bit of a challenge. To help us sort it all out, we're joined by Jim Brooks here at the Food and Ag Product Center. And Jim, let's just talk in general. What do the expiration dates of foods really mean?
It's estimated that the average household throws away between $800 and $1,000 of food each year. So you multiply that by the number of families, and that's a significant loss of food that's probably still good. But the biggest one that people talk about is use-by dates. Use-by dates are a guide that manufacturers go by to where their product is at peak quality. It doesn't mean when it hits that date that it's not edible or you can't use it. You certainly can, but that just means that that was due to their shelf life studies. That's about as long as the product was at its peak. This milk, for example, it has a best by date of 12/24/15. And generally speaking, that's good for 3 or 4 days even after that date. But the solids in the fat and milk will start to give it that aroma, and you can certainly tell when milk is no longer good. But it doesn't mean that you have to dispose of it if you've got one more bowl of cereal to fix. You just have to be smart about the dates and the quality of the product when you use it. The other is a sell-by date. So for the retailer, the grocery store that you shop at, when something gets down to 2 or 3 days on it, they want to get rid of it. So they may mark it down and put it in a dump somewhere in the store, 2 for 1 or something, and it's still, the product's good. And if you buy it and you take it home, put it in the refrigerator, put it in the freezer till you're going to use it, doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, again, at the peak of its quality around that time. And then you have a best used by. This product is good, estimated for probably a year, 18 months. If I haven't used it by then, I probably won't, because that tells me that the testing on this put a date on it that it was good, so I'm probably not going to use it. Same thing on the olive oil that we have here. It has this best by date on it. So oils have a tendency to break down and become a little rancid after that date. So it's kind of like milk. You can smell it, you can taste a little bit of it, and you can tell if it's good or not. So all of those factors, the use by, the sell by, and best by, are an indication to give you an idea when you buy these products about what you can expect for them.
Okay, good advice, Jim Brooks. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Finally today, for a lot of people, me included, nothing quite beats farm fresh eggs. And more people all the time are wanting to learn how to raise backyard chickens. To get started, we turn to our Northwest area livestock extension specialist, Dana Zook.
We are at Mike Wilda's small farm southeast of Perry, Oklahoma, and it's a really unique place Mike has created for his family. He lives in the Perry area but uses this place as an outlet just to get away from town. It gives him the ability to raise chickens.
About 3 or 4 years ago, I got the girls 4 or 5 chickens, and for them, some responsibility for them to take care of them and to sell the eggs. And we enjoy eating the farm fresh eggs, and the girls also sell them. We've got a few clients now that like to buy the eggs, because eggs nowadays are getting so expensive in the grocery stores.
What's driving the poultry is, first of all, I think that the idea of farm fresh eggs is very enticing to people. They want to know where these eggs coming from, where the animals come from. They want to know where they've been fed and how they've been fed, whether antibiotics or without antibiotics. I still think it goes back to the family farm and trying to have responsibility for your kids to go out and feed chick eggs and make sure everything is in check.
And so we've gotten 19 chickens, and they're different varieties. We have the sex links and the Wyandottes, and we did some research. We looked at the ones that were hardy for our environment, Oklahoma's climate. You know, they're pretty warm summers and pretty harsh winters. And so these birds are pretty hardy. They're big brown egg layers, and that's what we were kind of looking for.
I think chickens are a great opportunity for kids to get involved. Nowadays, I don't think that kids get out enough to see agriculture, and so this is a really cool opportunity. Animals are a really good source of knowledge and fun for kids.
It's a family-oriented operation, so I think it'd be good for anyone, that especially if they want farm fresh eggs and don't pay the high prices of the grocery store.
If you are considering a poultry in your backyard, first you need to stop by City Hall and visit with them, see about the regulations and codes. If there's not any codes, you might want to visit with the city councilman and visit with them about getting the codes set, so that way you can have poultry in your backyard.
The second thing you could do after you figure out that you can indeed have chickens in your backyard is to consult your county extension educator. There's been a variety of programs across the state, and so they should be well versed in small poultry production. The third thing to do is then find a good place where you can find equipment for your backyard poultry flock. You want to have a good source of feed for them, a consistent source, and then where you're going to get your chicks. Or are you going to get chicks in the mail? Are you going to get them with eggs? Or are you going to obtain them at a local retail spot? There's a variety of farm supply stores that have chicks available this time of year.
You know, it's fairly simple. I mean, the chickens take care of themselves. We come out and we feed and water them and gather the eggs, and we clean the coop real good once a year, and you know, that also helps the girls learn, you know, about keeping things clean and doing the right thing for the chickens. The healthier they are, the better they produce.
If you're looking for more information as far as backyard chicken production, we have the Northwest Oklahoma Backyard Chicken Conference coming up April 2nd. It's from 9 to 2. The cost to attend is $10, and kids 15 and under are free. We will have seminars, demonstrations, and giveaways throughout the day. We would love to have you attend. The cost, as I said, is $10 per person, and that is on April 2nd.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.